People come to me because their music education has failed them. Not because they learned wrong or not because it like killed their passion or something like that, but just because what got them here isn't gonna get them there, right? And the reason for this is that most music education really focuses on what I call mechanical learning. Okay, so it teaches you things like, how do I hold these things? What buttons do I press to make the sound? Like, how do I put the notes together in the right way to make the right chord? Which is, you need it. You need to learn how to operate this thing. It's like if you were learning chess, you need to know how the pieces move before you start thinking of like creative theory and stuff like that. And you need to, if you're driving a car, you need to know that this pedal makes it go and this pedal makes it stop before you start doing drag races or drifting or something like that, right? But most of the time when people come to me, it's because they're moving beyond that phase. Because that mechanical type of learning, ultimately, it won't help you with kind of like the bigger things in your music, especially the bigger things in your jazz playing or your improvisation or your songwriting, something like that, right? It's things like application, right? This mechanical thing. It's really good for learning how to use the thing, but it doesn't teach you how to use it in real life. Like, how do I use this in a song, right? I know how to play a scale, but am I just going to play the scale in the song? Like, how does that work, right? Or, I know how to play all the comp examples, but where do I play them? And what kind of song am I playing? What kind of song do I even want to play, right? It doesn't help them with individuality, you know? If everybody learns from the same book, then you don't sound like yourself. Or, maybe you copy some phrases from a recording or something like that. It just starts to sound like you're copy and pasting. And ultimately, it doesn't feel right, right? Because I think most of us, when we play music, we're doing it because we want to express ourselves, right? We don't want to just be an imitator. I guess we could just do, I don't know, like ChatGPT or AI or something like that if we just wanted to imitate things, right? We want to express our individuality. And then the other thing that this mechanical process doesn't give is enjoyment, right? There's a certain point when you're learning just by doing mechanics, the coordination exercises, the scales, all these things, that it starts to feel like a slog. Because it's kind of like the baseline assumption there is that I need to know all the mechanics, I need to know every scale and every key, before I can make art that I like, right? I need to know every permutation of my left hand comping against a ride cymbal before I go to a jam session and play gigs, right? I need to memorize every standard in the real book before I make real music that I like, right? That resonates with me, the real thing that I want to do. How real is that real book? It starts to feel like when you're practicing just mechanical stuff that you're just kind of fighting against this standard that you have to like overcome. Isn't that weird how we call them jazz standards? Like you have to meet the standard before you can create something. There is a certain amount of that. You'd have to learn how to drive your instrument, right? But you start to feel like you're just anguishing in the practice room instead of like, wow, I'm really in touch with my instrument. I'm really in touch with myself. I just love doing this. You don't want to feel like it's like this workout routine that you have to do every week or else you're not going to be good enough. You want to feel like I'm on the process of getting better, becoming more myself, growing in every single thing that I do musically. And so when you start to get to this point in your development where mechanically you can do some stuff, you know how to drive the car, you know how the chess pieces move, that's when you have to start switching from a mechanical process of learning to a creative process of learning. And the creative process of learning is totally different. It's not this like, behavioral psychology thing of like, if this, then that, blah, 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 right? It's a process. It's a process where the process in and of itself becomes rewarding, okay? And the way I see it, there's a couple different steps. And this is kind of the shift you have to make when you're going from just like, can I play my instrument to like, I'm playing creative jazz music. I'm expressing myself. I'm writing songs that I love, right? So the first step in this creative process, the way I see it, is struggle. Right? And I don't mean like, oh, you need to suffer for your art. Like, that's not it at all. What I mean by struggle is that you have to be bumping up against something that you want to do, but that you can't do yet, or something that you want to express, but you can't express yet. This might look like, I want to flow more during my solos. It might look like I want to play more emotionally on a ballad. It might look like I want to write a song that's like a love song, but it also has a heaviness to it, right? It has to feel like something like that, where it's like, I can't quite do this yet. And the reason is, if you don't struggle, you don't change, right? If you're not pushing up against something that you want to do that you can't do, then there's no impetus to change, right? Like, if you just want to play the same exercises that you already know just because you want to touch your instrument, great. But creatively, you're not going to create anything, because inherently playing the same exercises, just doing the same things that you can already do, that's the opposite of creative. Creative is making new things, oftentimes out of old things, right? So that's the first step, is you have to struggle. You have to put yourself in a situation where you might not be comfortable, maybe by going to a jam session, maybe by trying to create your first album, maybe by trying to write your first song, maybe by playing a tempo that you're not comfortable with, or playing more expressively, right? Taking risks, okay? And the struggle will show you what you need to create, okay? This is the part that might feel a little difficult, is that you then have to go into the second step, which the second step is limitation, okay? There's this great Stravinsky quote. I've got it right here so I don't forget it. The more constraints one imposes, the more one frees oneself of the chains that shackle the spirit. Wow, that's beautiful. Basically, the more you limit yourself, the more free you are, okay? The reason for that is that if you don't limit yourself, you're just gonna fall into your habits, okay? Because the human mind is designed to, protect your energy, constrain your calories, think less hard so that you don't have to go find more food to eat and you can survive longer, right? And so it will just go into the muscle memory. This is the comping phrase I always play. This is the lick that I always play on 2-5-1s. Whenever I write songs, I just always use this chord progression, right? In that way, you are less free when you don't put limitations on it, because you're just going to make the same thing, which it means you're just kind of running in this circle, going deeper and deeper to this tread that you've been walking over and over again, okay? That's why it's so important that you create limitations, because it's going to break your muscle memory. It's going to shatter it. It's going to force it to change. Like, literally, you're going to have to form new connections in your brain, right? That's why you have habits, is because the neural pathways have been tread so many times that your brain can do them efficiently. And we have to create new pathways, which is going to make you more dynamic, more free, more creative, okay? So, what does this look like? It looks like this. Play a solo where you only play on the snare drum, right? Play a solo where you only use 3 notes. Play a solo where you only use 1 note. Play a solo on a ballad where, you play the same phrase over and over again, and the way you make it exciting is by changing the dynamics, okay? Write a song using a melodic fragment that you got from Brad Mehldau and combine it with a chord progression that you got from the band Lawrence, right? Whoa! That is super limiting. And that's going to take you out of your patterns, right? It's going to force you to, well, actually, you're going to feel less free, right? Because you're going to feel so limited by I'm just playing the snare drum. I feel like I'm so reined in, right? And it is going to feel a little bit like an exercise at first. That's okay. That's not what this step is about. It's not about the actual freedom. It's about building your intuition. It's about creating new connections, new neural pathways in your brain so that you have more options, right? You have more routes that you can take, which is ultimately going to make you more free later. I think of this like weightlifting, right? These limitations, they force you to get stronger so that later when you go to perform, like imagine a soccer player. He does squats in the gym, not so he can get good at doing squats, but so that his legs get stronger, so that when he goes to play soccer, he's faster. He kicks the ball further, right? He has less risk of injury, okay? That's what this limitation phase is all about, okay? Here's the thing. What comes out of this limitation phase might sound like utter garbage. And like, there's this songwriter who I went to a master class of hers once, and she said, write 10 turds, right? Write 10 songs that just suck, right? Because sometimes it's not about like, this has to be a perfect, shiny baby. Like, this might not be the finished product. This might be just the process by which I develop the finished product, right? And it's very important, you know, in this limitation phase, it might end up sounding kind of clinical, kind of like an exercise, because it kind of is, right? It's to strengthen ourselves, right? You have to go into the next phase, which is application, okay? It's to take the skills that you developed. Oh, I learned how to use this Brad Mehldau melodic phrase in 15 different ways. Oh, I learned how to use drags and roughs to make my snare solos more interesting. Oh, I learned how to, you know, play a solo with dynamics and, you know, just so I can make it more emotional, right? You take whatever you learned in the limitation phase, and now you actually try to make something beautiful out of it. You put it in real life, okay? So this is where you say, okay, I'm going to take the solo ideas I learned in the snare, and I'm going to use it in a trading chorus. I'm going to take the Brad Mehldau phrase, and I'm going to write a song about my baby niece and how proud I am of her, right? I'm going to take the dynamics I learned, and I'm going to play a heart-wrenching solo over body and soul, right? Make something. Make something real. Create something. Like, get out of exercise land. And when you do this, it's gonna start to connect your ideas to the other things in your brain, right? It's kind of like if you learn a word, but then you learn how to use it in a sentence, right? You have to use it with all the other words that you know. And you also have to use it with the sentence structures you know, the nouns and verbs and predicates and clauses, right? So it'll force it to, again, we're creating more brain connections. It'll force it to, you know, be connected with all the other ideas in your brain, which means it's actually going to come out when you are just creating, right? So if you don't do this phase, this is common for jazz players, is they're like, oh, I practiced this lick, or I did this transcription, or I learned these chord progressions, but it doesn't come out in my playing, right? It's like if a painter practiced this brush stroke, this brush stroke, this brush stroke, and then when they went to make a real painting, they just did this brush stroke, right? If you don't do this application phase, it will not come out in your playing, which kind of just makes it like a mechanical thing again. You're not actually creating. You're not actually informing your intuition. At the end of the day, that's the whole goal of this. So you have to do this phase where you connect it to your other ideas, where you actually apply it and you make something, okay? Now, all that probably sounded like a lot of thinking, right? I'm struggling. I'm doing something I can't do. I'm limiting myself. I'm creating these rules and these games, these obstacle courses, this weightlifting that I have to play in order to break my habits. And then I'm applying it. I'm forcing it into my solo. I'm forcing it into the song I'm writing, right? So that it can connect with the other ideas that I have. I don't want to create in that state. I don't want to be thinking a lot, you know? I got to tell you, the best songs I've ever written, they just came out of me. Right? Like retrospectively, I can analyze it and see what I was doing. And it all comes from what I've learned over the years. That's my vocabulary. But it just came out. Same thing with drum solos, right? I have some really good memories of being at, you know, this crappy dive bar in Chicago, Lily's, and they had a jam session. And we're up super late, all our friends are there, and playing some of the best solos of my life that felt the most connected and creative and free. And I wasn't thinking at all, they just came out of me, right? I'm not thinking about my vocabulary or my phrasing. I'm just kind of feeling the energy of the room and listening to the people that I'm playing with. And that's why the fourth step in the creative process is the most important. Freedom. Isn't that what we all want? When we play, we want to feel connected. We want to feel like a painting just comes out of us when we paint. You know, a solo just comes out of us every time we play the piano. A song can come out of us every time we write. You have to take all of that stuff that you learn and just forget it all and just play. Just let it come out of you. Just flow, right? It should feel like you're just goofing off. It should feel like play. And when I say play, I don't mean like playing your instrument. I mean like playing on the playground, like jumping off the slide or whatever, right? It should feel like, man, this is just so fun, and I feel in touch with my creative process, and this is what I'm meant to be doing on this planet, right? That is what we're all striving for. That's that enjoyment that I was talking about. That's that individuality that I was coming out. You know, your intuition is coming out of you, right? You have to get to that phase, and you have to let yourself do that, right? But it comes from all the work you did in phases 1 through 3, where you're struggling, you're limiting yourself, and then, you know, you're applying it, right? Then what's going to happen once you just play and you just let yourself be creative is your creative mind is going to give you little gifts. And I call these gifts what ifs. What if I wrote a Radiohead song that swung? You know? What if I took this Brad Mehldau lick and tried to make a 2-5-1 out of it, right? What if I took this Tony Williams phrase and tried to play it in an ECM style, right? What if I wrote a whole album that was about hiding in the woods? What if I, you know, had a band with these people and they mixed together in these ways, right? Those what ifs are gonna be the struggles that you go back to in step 1, right? You start the whole process over and over again. What if I put that Brad Mehldau phrase over a 2-5-1? Oh, I can't do that yet. Time to limit myself. Time to apply it. Then it just comes out of me. I was at the jam session and this Brad Mehldau phrase came out, right? What's beautiful about this is the freedom that you feel in that 4th step, you start to feel it in the whole process, because the what ifs are the struggles and the limitations and the applications, right? And it ends up being that everything you work on, whether it's a struggle, a limitation, an application, or even honestly a mechanical exercise, starts to feel creative. Because the process of learning it is the very thing that's coming out of you. It's the very creative intuition that's coming out of your immune system, you know, all the connections in your brain, and you enjoy it. And you enjoy the process more, rather than feeling like you have to execute all these exercises and learn all these standards or whatever in order to just be good enough, okay? So, if you're at that stage, I highly encourage you to enjoy the creative process. Have fun.